You're listening to the Huddle Up Podcast with Chad Jensen and Zack Kelberman. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com and sound off. And now it's time to drop some knowledge.
Okay, we are live. We got to let it breathe just for a moment. Got to bring in the Facebook peeps. Get the tribe all under one tent here. It'll just take a moment and we'll dive right in. And we're good. Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up Podcast, presented, as always, by Mile High Huddle and powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, as always, my partner in crime. You know him. You love him. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, the Chiefs, for the third consecutive year, are in the AFC Championship game. But this time around, there's now some doubt, of course, as to whether or not Patrick Mahomes is going to be there, be able to make it out of concussion protocol in time to play the big game. What was your reaction to Browns Chiefs? And of course, any other thoughts you had over the AFC divisional round playoffs this weekend?
What a wild game that was. And let me just say again, injuries suck, for the millionth time. Seems like 2020 is extending into 2021. Chad, we were just kind of going back and forth about it, and I can make a whole Kelberman's Corner segment about Andy Reid's choice of coaching in that moment. You have a $500 million quarterback, a franchise quarterback, reigning MVP of the Super Bowl. He's injured. He's gimpy. It's 3rd and 1. You run him on an option, not a sneak, but you run him on the outside and you expose him to injury, and look what happens there. You draft a running back in the first round and you have your injured $500 million quarterback running an option. That, to me, it's a rare, bizarre, really bad play call by Andy Reid. And he made up for it later in the game with Chad Henne, but I don't know about that, getting Mahomes injured, Chad. That was definitely on Reid.
Yeah, absolutely. But, it's football. Sometimes what hits the fan, but it's going to be really interesting to see if Mahomes is unable to make it out of protocol in time. And he was pretty woozy. He could barely get to his feet without help from his teammates when he actually was trying to get up. So it was definitely man down type situation. And Chad Henne came in and, just watching, it's like when Matt Moore came in last year when against the Broncos and then that stretch.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're like, Matt Moore, he's like the most average NFL backup, same with Henne. But what you realize when they step into the game is just how blessed Pat Mahomes really is. Yes, Pat Mahomes is a phenomenal quarterback, right now the best quarterback in the game. But, Zack, he is blessed with an ungodly supporting cast. I mean, the speed on that offense, just the talent that team has at the skill positions, it just jumps off the screen or jumps off the field even more when you see the backup come in that's not wearing number 15.
It's also a testament to coaching that the Chiefs can win a playoff game with Chad Henne at quarterback. That was a one-possession game against a tough Browns defense, and Chad Henne pulled it off there because of Andy Reid. It also goes to show that maybe the Broncos should invest in a better veteran backup quarterback, because you never know what could happen when your franchise guy or whoever's your starter goes down. I hope Mahomes returns for the AFC title game, because I want to see Buffalo versus Kansas City at full strength. I love to see that matchup, but it was just surprising seeing Reid be so risky there when usually he's so spot on. And I think the best play caller in the NFL risking Mahomes like that was eye-opening to me.
Guys, we have a lot to get to tonight, including, of course, the topic of tonight's show, which is what Woody Paige has been reporting, both in his written articles, columns, and a couple of tweets that he's put out the last couple of days, as it relates to the Broncos quarterback situation, as it relates to one Drew Lock. I see that we've got a lot of great comments already stacked up, several super chats. We're going to get to every one of you tonight. Trust, we're going to get there. First, though, we do have to say thank you and say hello to our presenting sponsor of tonight's show, Manscaped. All right, Manscaped back in the saddle with Mile High Huddle and the Huddle Up podcast. Look, 2020 sucked. It's in the books. It's now a new year, and that means it's time for you to have a new focus on being Manscaped, which is, of course, manscaped.com, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. They offer precision-engineered tools for your family jewels, and they've helped more than 2 million men all over the world get rid of the, trim things up, let's just say. And, Zack, sometimes maybe in 2020 dudes let themselves go a little bit with quarantine and all that, but Manscaped is here to help you reboot, help you stay clean, help you stay shaved in 2021, Zack.
Yeah, I mean, quarantine or not, Chad, you have to look at yourself in the mirror. No one wants to see hair coming out of your nose, hair coming out of your ears, hair coming out of, unmentionable parts of your body. And regardless, Manscaped makes it so easy with their products. It has a great grip. I'm holding the Weed Whacker right now for your nose. I've mentioned this a lot before. I get a lot of use out of this. I use it fairly often. It's not taboo to talk about being a guy. We have to do male grooming, Chad, and it comes in handy. It's holds a charge for days and days on end. It's easy. It gets in there. You turn it on like that. Gets in there, gets the hair out, and it always works for me. So I think any guy out there looking to trim up a little bit and feel a little better about themselves, it's a big confidence boost when you get rid of that hair and kind of clean up a little bit. So Manscaped's definitely the way to go for that.
No doubt about it. And they have a lot of different products to help you stay on your game, help you elevate your game when it comes to manscaping. But the rock star, the star of the show, is the Lawnmower 3.0. It's got the light, helps illuminate some of the spots that are a little bit hard to see for most dudes. And it's just state-of-the-art, top-notch, quality engineered product, the Lawnmower 3.0. So listen up, gang. Right now, 2021, it's a fresh year. It should be a fresh you. Go to manscaped.com right now. Use the code HUDDLE, and you'll get 20% off and free shipping with code HUDDLE. Your family jewels will thank you, Zach.
Yes, once again, Broncos country, get 20% off and free shipping with the code HUDDLE at manscaped.com. Again, that's 20% off with free shipping, guys, at manscaped.com. Remember to use the code HUDDLE. Your family jewels, as Chad said, will thank you.
All right, John, I know we saw that super chat that was talking about the topic here. This will be a nice little jumping off point. Josh Alstrom, good to see you, my friend, longtime listener, bona fide superstar. Good to see you, brother. He says, John Elway is already interfering, I see. The moment I saw, quote, resignation but promotion, close quote, I knew he was still in charge. He still outranks the GM. It's interesting, Zach, because indeed the Broncos have been careful to use some of the talking points have been George Paton answers to John Elway. Vic Fangio answers to John Elway. The hierarchy is pretty clearly established. And then we hear kind of, mixed messages, because then we hear that, he's going to be hands off, that he's probably, he moved his office officially, his GM office that he's held for the, the last 10 years that overlooks the field for training camp and the practice field. He moved out of there, moved into one of Pat Boland's old conference rooms, and gave that, premium spot to George Paton, because there's a reason why for the Broncos that's the GM office. But Zach, mixed messages, and I want to touch on this thing real quick, that this topic that Woody Paige has been reporting on the last couple of days. He had a few, like I said, he had a few columns and articles, and I would suggest that you guys go read those. But something today that he tweeted that caught my attention right here is, quote, this is Woody Paige of the Colorado Springs Gazette. He's covered the Denver Broncos in one form or another for decades. All right. Here's Woody Paige, quote, George Paton knew all about Drew Lock coming out of college. I can tell you, frankly, he hasn't studied him since or after he took the Broncos job. He will be studying tape when he gets here full time. But Vic and John are pushing for Drew to get another year with a backup veteran free agent, close quote. So, Zach, what's your initial reaction to that?
I mean, well, first of all, everyone knew he was already the president of football ops, Chad. That title didn't go anywhere. So regardless of whether, he brought a new GM, and he still maintained that title, and don't focus too much on titles, because he really is giving the baby over to George Paton. He gets to run the operation now, but I wouldn't look at it as meddling or him interfering or, cutting him at the knees, George Paton. It makes sense that he would get advice and maybe some influence from Elway, considering Elway brought these players and these coaches in. He has some more than just surface knowledge, but he has intimate knowledge of everyone in the building. And for at least the transition period going from Elway to Paton as GM, it would make sense to use him as a sounding board and just for, scouting purposes. And that includes in starting with Drew Lock at quarterback. Obviously, he had Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. He was focused on him. Who cares about Drew Lock in Denver? Now that he got here, I've been saying this for a while now. I said it on the day he was hired. It's his baby, George Paton now. But I guarantee you in the interview process, Vic Fangio and Elway and Ellis maybe made it clear to George Paton, we would prefer, but it's not mandatory, we would like if Lock remained under center for 21, if he got one more year. But George, it's up to you.
My take on this, first and foremost, is what's up, Muhammad? Good to see you, my friend. Appreciate you, my brother. In fact, I know we have a super sticker, right? That's what these call it, a super sticker from MHH's in-house male model. Good to see you, my brother. Appreciate your support, and it was great to see you today during Kelberman's Corner. We're going to talk a little bit about that here in a few minutes. But, look, John Elway, I think it's very true that he's basically going to be hands-off. And I think for the next little while, you're rarely going to see him at Dove Valley. I mean, not that people really see John anyway, but he's not going to be at Dove Valley at the UC Health Training Center, keeping an open office, doing his thing. I think he's going to disengage, go, spend time with his 7th grandchild. He's got vacation homes in California. He's got a vacation home in Idaho. He'll spend some time away. This is George Paton's baby. And of course, he'll make himself available to anything Paton needs with regard to the transition and kind of taking over the reins. But I think what this really shows more than anything is that during that interview process, when they were talking to, interview-wise, 5 different candidates, which let's just rewind, it included New England's Dave Ziegler, Chicago's Champ Kelly, New Orleans' Terry Fontenot, in-house guy Brian Stark, and of course, Paton. I think one of the, maybe not necessarily a non-negotiable, but one of the strong qualifiers for Elway, for Vic, for everyone doing the interviews, all right, conducting these interviews, was the individual take each guy had on Drew Lock. Is he salvageable? And I say that not, it sounds like when I say salvageable, like he's been some kind of bum. I know there's some fans that really view him that way, like Derek here. Bless you, my friend. I understand where you're at, I guess. I mean, I understand what you're saying is probably a better way to put it. He says, I want to see Drew Lock gone. I don't think he was, the dregs of the NFL, like some of his stats, depending on which ones you want to cherry pick, would lead you to believe. But nevertheless, Zach, if Fangio made that one of the qualifiers, which I think they kind of did, my guess is that George Paton was the one that was the most amenable to the idea of giving Drew Lock another swing at the plate. Doesn't mean you don't tweak it at quarterback, go find a more proven, more reliable veteran backup to push Lock a little, also serve as the mentor. But this is really the last hurrah. The 2021, even without Elway as GM, it's really the last hurrah of the Elway vision, because Vic Fangio's back. It's his last chance to really prove that he can keep this job. And I think Drew Lock fits right into that picture. And some fans might not want to hear that, but it's probably the truth.
A lot of fans don't want to hear that. And I think George Paton is okay with the status quo for now. And the status quo means retaining Lock under center with a better backup, retaining the offensive coaching staff and Pat Shurmur and Mike Shula. He also knows if things go south in 21, he can fire everyone and rebuild and get his guys in the building, draft his quarterback or sign his quarterback, hire his head coach. So it makes sense not to start the rebuild when you're saddled with guys that it's not going to change. You're not going to fire Fangio at this point. You're probably not going to fire Pat Shurmur at this point. It makes sense to keep most things in place knowing you have a mulligan. He's not going to get any heat at all if things go bad this year, George Paton. He's on complete scholarship for 2021. Next year is on him. That's when the real George Paton era starts. This is a continuation and also the end of the Elway era. That's why I believe, and this is why we've been saying, don't expect a Deshaun Watson trade. He's not going to come in here knowing all of that and knowing how he wants to build a team and make a huge franchise-altering blockbuster move and giving up so much capital and money to Deshaun Watson. It might be disappointing. It's definitely not sexy. It's not going to draw a lot of headlines, but look for a lot of the status quo to remain for next season.
Lots more to get to, guys. Real quick, we also got to tip our cap to another sponsor of tonight's show. Everyone knows, everyone loves sportsbetting.com. And if you're not sure what sportsbetting.com is, allow us to clue you in. Right now, gambling legal in the state of Colorado. If you want to make watching the NFL playoffs or the NBA a little bit more interesting, sportsbetting.com is your no-brainer destination because you get sharp odds and low juice. You get hassle-free bonuses, which you can roll over after one time. And you get 24/7 live customer support. It's always a real human being in the United States. But the kicker, and the reason you want to use sportsbetting.com is this. Right now, after you make your first deposit, sportsbetting.com will double your deposit up to $300. It's $300 in free bet credit. So head on over to sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle, sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle, and capitalize on up to $300 in free bet credits and start 2021 off on the right foot. All right, couple quick things. We'll dive right back in. Huddle Up Pod. Follow us on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod. The main account at Mile High Huddle. My partner, Zack Kelberman, as you can see on the screen here, at Kelberman NFL. Myself, at Chad and Jensen. And then, of course, our producer. You want to connect with Buana Beast, John K. On Twitter, it's at John K. MHH. Also, shout out, gentle reminder to check out the merch store. Get yourself a hat. Get yourself a Huddle Up Podcast hat, T-shirt. There's hoodies. There's face masks. There's mugs. Little something for everybody. Another way to support what we're doing here. And Zach, again, we gotta remind everybody, if you have not become an official supporter on Facebook of Mile High Huddle, even if most of your time spent enjoying these podcasts, participating in the conversation is done on YouTube, you want to head on over to Facebook, our page, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle, become a supporter, click the big blue button, because you get access to not only Kelberman's Corner, which is every Sunday, it's Zach and it's Kim Becker every Sunday at noon, hot takes that hold water, a little bit different vibe, a little bit different flavor than what we do here on the long form podcast. You got to become a supporter. Plus, we're just getting started. We're going to be creating new shows and different content for our Facebook supporter community, for the subscribers over there. It doesn't mean we're not going to be doing more with YouTube, because we got a lot of big plans for YouTube as well. But if you want to have the Mile High Huddle umbrella totally over you, have access to everything, you also get over to facebook.com and become a supporter on the page. But Zach, great show today. Loved it. It was a fun conversation, and we got to tip our cap to everyone that jumped in there, and all of our new subscribers that have funneled over from the different, whether it's Twitter or Periscope, I guess, or YouTube. It was great.
Thank you. And, not to give anything away because everyone should check it out, but it was about a lightning rod topic in Broncos country, which is Deshaun Watson. And however you feel about it, I give my opinion. And again, like Chad said, it's a hot take that holds water. It's not just something baseless. I'm saying it's what I believe in, and I think it's rooted in logic and facts for Denver. So if that's important to you, please check that out. Consider becoming a VIP. We appreciate you, and I'll see you Sunday.
Got to be there, gang. And we're just getting started there. So a couple last things. Subscribe, first and foremost. These three things. If you can't support the merch store, it's all good. If you can't become a subscriber or a superstar on Super Chat, it's all good. If you can do these three things, though, each and every one of you. Subscribe, first and foremost. Like this video, guys. It helps us so much on YouTube and Facebook if you just like the video while you're watching it. And then the third thing is the litmus test. If we're doing a good job, share it out there. Help us continue to grow and reach new like-minded Broncos fans just like you.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, John, I know you said that there was here we go. Boggins. Good to see you, my brother. One of our longtime listeners, longtime superstar. Just appreciate everything Boggins does. He does a lot for us. He's made an intro for Huddle Up. He made an intro for Mile High Insiders. He helps me kind of police the Mile High Huddle Superfan Facebook group, and we appreciate you, my friend. He says here, George Paton needs to pull a "I'm the captain now" and analyze this team with complete, unbiased opinions and shake up the snow globe a bit. So a little bit of this and see how the snow falls.
How much could you shake it up, though, without emasculating Vic Fangio or maybe, stepping on Elway's toes, with the understanding he's still going to be around the building in his role for 2021, and this is his roster and his players in place. I don't know how much he can do. I mean, he can go to Vic Fangio and be like, maybe Tom McMahon shouldn't have a job right now. Maybe you should reconsider keeping him. But at this point, most of the staff has to remain. They're going into the draft scouting season now. They're going into the free agent scouting season now. George Paton's not even in the building yet full time. He has to get to know everyone. He has to meet with the players, the coaches. He can't shake it up too much. And that's why I'm saying they're going to make some moves. He's going to be aggressive but not reckless, but look for a lot or a fair amount of the status quo from last year to remain for next season.
Hey, John, just FYI, the chat just did a pretty healthy jump on me, and I'll tell you where I'm at as far as the stream is. Cali Dave, which, by the way, Cali Dave, I'm just going to grab this real quick since he's right there. He's on my mind. Congratulations, excuse me, on your retirement and your relocation to North Carolina. Yes. We appreciate you. Hope everything's going well, and we hope you have great plans for what you and the missus are going to do in retirement. But congrats on a job well done. Hope you got a nice gold watch or something as you retired there. But if not, we'll give you the digital gold watch here on the show. Appreciate you, Dave. He says, now a Broncos fan in North Carolina. Denver Broncos for life. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, we'll give you a mile-high salute, though. And God bless you, Dave. Enjoy your retirement, and thank you for your support.
A virtual gold watch to Cali Dave. What's up, George? By the way, a little birdie told me that it might be George's. Well, it was George's birthday a couple days ago. So happy belated to you, my friend.
Yes.
Hope you had a great birthday and a great birthday weekend.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Hope you like turning 21, George. Thank you.
So, John, let me just tell you, though, there's another one from Josh, BNS, Kyle, and Kenneth that are out of my reach. So I don't know if you have any of those, but they are currently out of my reach. If I need to go back in, John's on it. Buona Beast is always on it. Josh, it's all good, my friend. Thank you for the super chat again. And he says, I'm sorry, but I'm pissed at Elway already strong-arming the new GM. Well, keep in mind, too, a little bit here, Josh, and this goes for everybody, that, you know, these are takes, you know. I'm sure, and I know Woody Paige has very well-placed sources at Dove Valley. When he says something, typically it's because he has a reason to say it. It's an educated take. Let's just put it that way. It's not someone just standing up there and just spitting to spit. But it's also so early in the process. I mean, George Paton hasn't even been GM for a week yet, right? He's officially, what's today? Day 4 of officially being the GM. He'll have his hello presser probably tomorrow. If not tomorrow, it'll be Tuesday. And, you know, he'll get the ball started. Meanwhile, John Elway going to continue to kind of ebb into the background. And a lot can change between now and not only free agency, but the draft. And Zach, one of those things is, and I know you touched on it today in depth on Kelberman's Corner, but it went from Deshaun Watson, that whole situation being, yeah, right. Like the Texans would ever in their right mind trade away Deshaun Watson, to suddenly looking very feasible. And here's why I say that. All right, really quick. This is, is there a more plugged in insider than this guy, Adam Schefter? No. All right. Adam Schefter, quote, sources believe Deshaun Watson may have played his last snap with the Houston Texans. And I mean, it's hard to wrap your brain around, but long story short, he wasn't happy with the fact that he was promised he would have a hand in hiring the new GM, you know, at least having a voice in that process, and the head coach. And they went and hired Nick Caserio, made him now probably the highest paid GM in the game, and did not consult him. He's pissed. And after all the depredations of the last couple of years, Zach, he really wants out. Now, the reports say that he has yet to officially request a trade, but it really feels like this is where it's building, what it's building toward.
I like how Shefty is getting into the headline selling business, Chad. It's a really punctual headline there. In terms of Deshaun Watson, another factor here is Cal McNair, the new ownership, and anyone who followed Bob McNair and his ownership tenure there. He's made some questionable comments, and he's had some questionable stances on certain things politically and otherwise that didn't jibe with the players in the locker room. And he's seen every other superstar player get shipped out. It's Clowney, DeAndre Hopkins, and more than likely he'll be next, and J.J. Watt. Right now, it's still speculation. I mean, a lot can still change, and I think they're interviewing Bieniemy as a way to placate Deshaun Watson. Might be a little too late, but I read that the Dolphins and the Jets are the two frontrunners for his prospective services if a trade should arise.
It wouldn't surprise me. And here's one thing that's interesting. One source told ESPN's Sarah Barshop that the Texans have had internal conversations about possible trade partners and what their quarterback position would look like in the future without Watson. And Zach, that kind of ties into the Periscope comment, John, that you flashed there a second ago. One thing to remember, George Paton, he has said it now. Well, he said it once. All right. He talked about the sleeping giant. He talked about being aggressive, but not reckless. Sounds like, for lack of a better term, GM speak, right? You go, oh, that's exciting. But you know what? I like the sleeping giant thing. That was a nice touch. But then he said, I want to say, Zach, that it was Friday, if I'm not mistaken, on the Denver Broncos team site, that he's going to be a part of every deal. Now, that doesn't mean the Broncos are trying to close every free agent or every little bird that tells them there's a guy on the trade block. That doesn't mean the Broncos are literally trying to get everybody. What it means, though, is like right now with this buzz going around, he's going to be a part of it. He's going to at least check on it. He's going to see the lay of the land, and he would be remiss not to do that, right? He would be remiss to not at least know what the lay of the land is, but it's going to be a very prohibitive prospect trying to land Deshaun Watson. I mean, you want to talk about selling the farm. You're not just selling the farm, dude. I mean, you're selling everything. And is he that big of a linchpin? Is he that big of a, that's all we need and we're there? I have my doubts. I think he's a great young quarterback. Don't get me wrong. But you put Deshaun Watson on this team and you don't have a first or second round pick for sure, the next 2 years, maybe 3. Is that a roster that can win it all? I have my serious doubts on that. And we've talked about it many times on the show. My answer is no, I don't think so, which is why ultimately Paton, on top of some of the other things which we've already discussed tonight, I think pumps the brakes.
It's so funny that he mentioned being aggressive but not reckless, and acquiring Deshaun Watson. It's going to take a minimum of 2 first-round picks. So it's not just selling the farm. It's selling the land the farm is on. It's selling the farm equipment. It's selling the farmers themselves. It's giving up almost a Ricky Williams-esque Saints deal, a package like that for Deshaun Watson. And I said this on Kelberman's Corner, quick little teaser. Name one time, guys, in franchise history, a top 5 quarterback in his prime was traded to another team. Not signed like Peyton Manning. Everyone brings that up. It's never happened for a reason. And he also said, Chad, George Paton, and not just we've known him about this, but he also said he believes in building from within. He believes in using the draft to build a team. And what do you use to build a team with draft picks? So why would he come in and give away his most valuable assets? And I guarantee you, because Elway was the same way. He believed in stockpiling capital, and draft picks were gold to him. I wonder if he gravitated toward Paton because he shared the same mindset. It's just, like I mentioned to Kim, if you want to acquire Deshaun Watson in a Broncos uniform, play Madden 21. In real life 2021, it's not going down. I can see Miami doing it, and I mentioned a perfect suitor for him, a team that's a quarterback away from winning a title, or the Niners. You put Deshaun Watson with Kyle Shanahan, that's a Super Bowl contender immediately. That's a team that can make a play for him, and they have a general manager in place in John Lynch who's aggressive, and he has the necessary capital and money to take him on.
BNS jumping in. Appreciate you, my brother. It's good to see you. He says, like Tannehill, I can't imagine giving up on Locke. Him ending up in Vegas and Chucky turning him into a playoff caliber quarterback. Thanks for my Broncos fix. Yeah, I mean, it's a concern. It's one of those things that depends on what you got in return, right? It depends on if what you got in exchange for that or, ended up panning out. But there's one fly in the ointment, Zach. I think there's one argument that can be made in terms of a precedent for a team trading away a quarterback that, let's just say, maybe not top 5. Let's just say top 15 in the prime of his years, and that's Jay Cutler. Back in 2009, Jay Cutler was coming off of a Pro Bowl year. Yeah, the Broncos didn't have a lot of team success. They finished right here, as you can see, 8-8. All right, but in terms of attempts, he was number 2. Let's take a look at yardage real quick. Cutler, 3rd in the game. Touchdowns, he was 7th. So let's just say that year it was a top 10 quarterback. We can safely say that, but it didn't pan out for the Bears. The Bears literally gave up the farm, and unfortunately, Zach, the Broncos got a king's ransom. Josh McDaniels did for Jay Cutler, but they didn't really do much with it. I mean, I'm trying to remember which ones were actually the Bears picks, but here's how he parlayed Jay Cutler. Alfonso Smith, Noshawn Moreno, Robert Ayers. I'm missing another one here. But Noshawn, he ended up being a solid player for the team, did not garner a second contract, had a 1,000-yard season. He was a big part, I would say, of that 2013 Peyton Manning all-time offense, but it was very short-term. It was a flash in the pan. And meanwhile, didn't play out too well for Jay Cutler in Chicago either. He went from being a legit on-the-rise star. I mean, Jay Cutler in 2009, he really was viewed similarly in the way that we're talking about Deshaun Watson now. Like when the first news came out that Jay Cutler could demand a trade, it was unbelievable. Like it was inexplicable. Fans were like, there is no way Jay Cutler gets traded. Like this guy could be the next John Elway. He's a first-round pick 3 years removed. I mean, the gun on this guy, but it happened. And so it's a cautionary tale for both sides. And that's why I think for the Denver Broncos, you're better off just keeping your picks, seeing what you got in Locke, won last year, going out. And if you can improve the quarterback position, like if you really think there's a quarterback in this class that is an immediate upgrade over Drew Lock today, and you think you're in striking distance at pick 9, hey, go get your guy if that's what you really think. I just don't think that's the way the wind's blowing.
I don't think the way the wind is blowing for George Paton either. I think he prefers to have his nucleus in place and have the draft picks necessary to add to the team and build it into a consistent contender. And I mentioned this on Kelberman's Corner, Chad, but how many titles has Deshaun Watson won? He's had a playoff caliber team around him consistently. I know the offensive line is an issue there, but he's had, great receivers, good running backs. He's had a lot of a helpful supporting cast. Coaching brought him back a little bit, but what would he bring to the Broncos in terms of giving up the assets that it would take to acquire him? You couldn't draft a cornerback in the first round or an inside linebacker. You probably can't re-sign Justin Simmons. You can't re-sign Shelby Harris. Von Miller might be part of that deal. You're stripping away a majority of the team to acquire one guy. And that one guy, especially with Pat Shurmur as his coordinator of all people, wouldn't be enough to take you over to the promised land because he didn't do it in Houston. And the way it would be to acquire him and give up all of those picks and all that money, it wouldn't happen in Denver either.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Kyle Heckman in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Appreciate the super chat. Very generous. Really means a lot to us, my friend. He says, I understand not wanting to pay that much for Watson, but the AFC has Patrick Mahomes, Watson, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, soon to be probably Trevor Lawrence, and Allen. Josh Allen, do you really see us drafting a comparable QB or lock progressing?
All of those guys were drafted by their teams and developed. That is how you win and build a top 5 or top 10 quarterback in the NFL. You don't win by acquiring a veteran or a Band-Aid or someone sloppy seconds or giving up the farm for Deshaun Watson who may or may not be available. I saw a comment that Brian said Brett Favre was traded for a first rounder. I said a top 5 quarterback in its prime, not when Favre was traded in the twilight of his career. It doesn't go down for a reason. It would take too much. And Houston, if they're even entertaining trading Deshaun Watson, that's a problem in itself. But it's realistically, logically, and I think a lot of fans are looking at this emotionally because they've been vying for a quarterback and they've been walking the desert, as you say, Chad, that Deshaun Watson, a Pro Bowler, a top 5 guy, becomes available and we all want to pounce. You have to look at things logically and think down the road 3, 5, 10 years, not just going all in for 1 year. For a new GM, Elway being out of the picture next year, no owner, an outgoing CEO in Joe Ellis, you don't make those moves with all those different moving parts up in the air. You make those moves if you're the Niners or the Dolphins with most things in place and the coaching staff to supplement that.
Bob wrote about this today, Bob Morris at milehighhuddle.com. Go read the article. But, there's kind of there's one golden rule typically that's pretty absolute when it comes to a franchise that is truly rebuilding, and it starts with a new GM and a new coaching staff. And then typically that GM and coaching duo, they go out and they get their quarterback and officially begin the rebuild. In Denver's case, it's kind of a bastardized version of that. The Broncos already started their rebuild. That started in 2018, all right? 2018 draft, 2019 draft, 2020 draft. Unfortunately, a lot of different outlying factors we could, waste our time basically going into as far as 2020, but it didn't pan out. But I honestly believe George Paton looks at this roster, and when he says sleeping giant, I believe it. A lot of the stuff I mentioned earlier about being aggressive, not reckless, to me, that's just GM speak. But the one thing, I believe him, that he said, I think this is a roster that is a sleeping giant. And Zach, your point is 100% on the money. No one trades a top 5 quarterback. It's kind of like the saying of there's no such thing as a free agent franchise quarterback, but there's always the exception that proves the rule. Peyton Manning was that exception back in 2012. You could maybe say Jay Cutler is another one of those exceptions, and maybe eventually Deshaun Watson will become another exception. But who knows? Maybe they'll end up salvaging this thing with Watson, and he'll stay in Houston because, God forbid, if you're the Houston Texans and you're having to not only start over with Nick Caserio and whoever, the new head coach, but also in the wake of having 1 year removed from dealing away DeAndre Hopkins and then Deshaun Watson. Yeah, you've got a grip of picks, right? You'll have a grip of draft picks to rebuild and King's ransom there, but it's just it's pretty frightening.
It's fair to wonder, though, if Peyton makes that comment about the sleeping giant, if he doesn't believe in Locke as being a potential franchise quarterback. I mean, if you're a potential giant or a sleeping giant, it's because at least you have the nucleus of a foundation of a quarterback in place. And, if Locke isn't the guy, I see some of the comments, that's the counter argument here. Watson can take you to the playoffs, but can Locke? If he can, he can't, but you have to keep swinging until you find that guy. Drafting him, preferably, that's the way to go in the NFL. You find the right guy and you have the right coaches to develop him and bring him along, and you have a quarterback for 5, 7, 10 years, not just going through the same cycle and merry-go-round over and over and over again.
Kenneth Booker, appreciate you, brother. He says, Chad and Zach, who's the best Broncos defender ever? Is it Vaughn or Champ? Vaughn. I'm not sure. Vaughn's up there, of course, and so is Champ, but I would throw in Randy Gradishar. And I know it didn't come, with a world championship. There was the 1978 Orange Crush defense that got to the Super Bowl and lost to the Cowboys. But I would honestly, as far as the best Broncos defenders ever, I mean, if you force me to boil it down between those two, I'm going to say Vaughn because of the Super Bowl. But honestly, when it comes to the top defenders, you can't use that series of words, that phrase, without also mentioning Gradishar. I think you have to mention Karl Mecklenburg, even though he wasn't this big twitched up, phenom. The fact that he started games at every position on the front seven, multiple All-Pros, multiple Pro Bowls. This is a guy that is maybe just below Randy Gradishar in terms of snub for the Hall of Fame, deserving of the Hall of Fame. Was on 3 different Super Bowl defenses. And the Broncos got torched every time in those 80s Super Bowls, the Broncos defense that Karl Mecklenburg was a part of. But I would put Karl Mecklenburg up there as well. And, but I guess between those two, I'm probably taking Vaughn, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close to me between Vaughn and Champ.
You can throw Simon Fletcher in there as well, but I mean, Von Miller literally won you a Super Bowl. He single-handedly pretty much won you a title. So between those two guys, Champ Bailey was an incredible cornerback and worthy of every bit of praise he receives. But Von was just a literal difference maker who was a very deserving MVP, Chad, of SB50.
And also Champ, I mean, I love Champ, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't exactly a homegrown Bronco, right? He spent the first – what was it? 99, I think he came in, or was it 99? He came to Denver 4 or 5 years later, right? From Washington. So I'm gonna stick with probably Vaughn on those two options, but I'm gonna throw Randy Gradishar up there as well. Mike Evans, good to see you, my brother. He's gonna be on the show, by the way, is Mike on Wednesday. We're gonna start trying to bring a few superstars onto the show again now that we're in the off season and things have kind of slowed down a little bit. So we look forward to talking to you, Mike. He says, would you hold on to the 9th pick or trade back to get more picks? Well, that's an interesting question, Mike, and I guess we could tell you what we would do, but what do we know about George Paton? Rick Spielman, the Vikings GM, who he worked for and with as a lieutenant. I mean, Spielman is the godfather of his son, Bo. Spielman said, it was Thursday or Friday, I don't remember which day it was, that he graciously made himself available to Broncos media to talk about this. But he said his philosophy in the draft has always centered around stockpiling as many picks as he could. Now, you got to be careful you're not cutting off your own nose to spite your face in those situations. Like if you have a true blue chip guy sitting there at pick 9 and the phone rings and you've got an opportunity to move back to whatever, 26 and stockpile an extra second round or whatever it might be, that extra pick's nice and you're still going to draft in the first round. But what did you give up to do that? Did you just pass on the next J.J. Watt? So it's a very nuanced and honestly, it's a dangerous prospect. But I think you're going to see George Paton be very open and amenable to making trades. This time around, though, I think the Broncos hold pat. And I would stay at 9 and just make the pick. And then the rest of the draft, Zach, hey, my ears are open. I'll listen to every call that comes in.
Yeah, and to a previous point that you made, any GM worth his salt is always involved in every deal, always picking up the phone to see what it would take in just a very tentative scenario. But I don't believe in trading for the sake of trading. I believe if you're in the top 10, especially staying put because you're almost guaranteed to land a blue chipper at a position of need. So at number 9 overall, the Broncos, essentially knowing what we know right now, considering the run on quarterbacks, are guaranteed to land a Micah Parsons or a Caleb Farley or a Surtain, and that's a good position to be in. It all depends, though, as always. We get this question a lot heading into draft season. It all depends on how the board looks at maybe when it's number 6 or number 7 on the clock. What players are available if a quarterback is falling? Zach Wilson's there and the Broncos don't want him. They might move back to stockpile picks from a desperate quarterback needy team, but we don't know that going in. My inclination and my preference is to stay put at 9. And then, like you said, Chad, if you want to move back in the 2nd, 3rd round, by all means.
Donald Netanyahu on YouTube jumping in to say, if you listen to what Paton has said about his philosophy, he indicated that player progression is at the top of his list. Our coaching staff better get right real soon. Yeah, I mean, he talked about it. He emphasized a few things. And again, here's what we have to go on. We have his statement that came Wednesday on the heels of him being hired, and then his Broncos TV sit down with Phil Milani. That's really all we've got so far on George Paton. But one of the things he talked about is his core philosophy of you build a championship roster through the draft, but it doesn't just end there. You don't just make the pick and walk away. You got to draft and develop, which is obviously the next key crucial component to that whole equation.
Yeah, the coaching staff knows, as we've been saying, it's probably going to be playoffs or bust for them next year. Vic Fangio on down. If they don't make the playoffs or at the very minimum go 9-7, Peyton's going to fire mostly everyone and bring in his own coaching staff. So yes, the coaching staff, if everything is kept in place, which it looks like it will be, they know that they are on the extreme hot seat in 2021.
Our friend Oscar, JL Avenger, good to see you, my friend, down there in Costa Rica. Really appreciate that super chat. He says, hi, guys. I sent a message before the super chat. Thanks again. A mile high salute from Costa Rica. Let me see if I can find that while I'm – Zach, real quick, why don't you grab Jason, and I'll see if I can find Oscar's previous question in the chat.
Yeah, real quick, what's the score of the game? Let us know, guys. Like, what's going on with the because that's interesting. It was very close last time I looked. 2020. How much time left?
Minute left in the 3rd quarter, and the Saints have the ball.
I read in the comments that Breeze is looking a little old, so it's pretty interesting. Anyway, Jason hopping in here with $4.99. Thank you so much, Jason. He says, hey, Chad and Zach, now that Paton is the GM, do you think we will see a pipeline of roster transactions from Minnesota to Denver? Great question, Jason. I actually have an article coming out about this very soon. There are a handful of impending free agents that Minnesota is putting out there that the Broncos could be interested in. No one really huge, no game-breaking starters, I think, available or Pro Bowlers, but I think a couple guys like Amir Abdullah, the running back, Jaleel Johnson, defensive tackle, Eric Wilson, outside linebacker, and Anthony Harris, just to mention 4 names, the safety there. So there could be some players that he likes there. We also have to mention, Chad, real quick, not to open a can of worms, Mitch Trubisky. He's going to be a free agent. He's a veteran quarterback. Obviously, Paton faced him twice a year in Minnesota and Chicago. That's one guy to keep an eye on that's a little outside the Vikings realm.
Yeah, and you look at ex-Vikings, maybe players that have been in Peyton's orbit in years past, and that are hitting free agency or maybe available via trade as possibilities too. I look forward to reading that article from Zach. Hopefully, probably tomorrow's. I would guess something like that. Leroy, good to see you, my friend, on Facebook. He says, in my opinion, sounds like to me Paton signing a 6-year deal. This is telling me that Elway and Ellis are gone after this season. So question is, why haven't Elway and Ellis signed new contracts?
Because they're gone.
I think, Zach, honestly, I think the reason why in Elway's case, I think just the lack of success combined with getting old, being wealthy, 7th grandchild being born. I think the virus that he caught in the middle of the football season took a lot of the air out of his wings, so to speak. And as far as Ellis is concerned, I think he's anticipating a true transfer of ownership. I think he's anticipating that Brittany Bowen's going to get it. I think that's his plan. Like, not just his plan, like, this is what I want to happen. Like, I think that's what he is expecting. He is supremely confident in the Pat Bowlen Trust, their case in court that, being sued by Beth Bowen Wallace and Amy Clemmer, the 2 oldest daughters of Pat Bowlen from a previous marriage. He's confident. And so I think in that confidence, and this is a guy that as a CEO and a business guy, he tends to have even in the age of the pandemic, he has a pretty good feel for once this thing does get before a judge and you get to court, timeline wise, all right, how long it's going to take to resolve. He has probably a pretty good beat on that. He's thinking this thing's over by next year. He probably wants to step down too. He's tired of it. I mean, He's up there mid-60s. He's about the same age as John Elway. So, it's all a factor, but ownership is the biggest reason why. And I think for Elway, again, Zach, the lack of success, getting older, losing some energy, etc.
Could be my tinfoil hat that's, wound a little too tight right now, but maybe that Ellis and Elway know that ownership will be resolved sooner than later, and Brittany is the front runner, and they don't want to work with her. They know maybe she'll oust them, she'll replace them. They want to get out of the picture now. Speculation on my part, but I feel like if his contract ran out after 2020, he'd be retired right now. The only reason the Broncos did him a big favor, instead of a gold Rolex, Chad, they let him keep his contract for one more season, collect that, whatever he's $6-7 million, whatever he's making, and then, right off in the sunset next year. So yeah, it seems like they're gone because they are gone. This is a true new era in Broncos country, and the 6-year deal is also another indication. This is not Elway being a puppet master for Peyton. This is Peyton being the puppet master for the entire team. This is his baby now on his show.
Orange Crush on Twitter wants to know, hey, any word on who's going to fill the Matt Russell role, the director of player personnel? I haven't read any updates on that, heard anything either behind the scenes. Last I heard is that don't sleep on it potentially being still possibly a Champ Kelly. And I know that the Broncos, the rumor is, the buzz is, they're looking to make that a diverse hire. They're looking to bring in someone that is black, that represents, 75% of the roster is black, and they want someone in their front office that represents the product on the field. And so don't sleep on Champ Kelly. There's a few other options out there, but I'd be okay with that. I had my doubts about Champ Kelly as the GM, but I think he'd be a really good right-hand man for George Paton. But that's a position Paton himself is going to fill. So it'll be interesting to see if his vision for that kind of jives with what we heard from Joe Ellis, a week ago.
Is it fair to say, though, that if the Broncos wanted to hire Champ Kelly, considering they interviewed him multiple times, he'd be hired by now? I think they have maybe other coals in the fire they're working on right now and trying to see if they can land that guy. I can't recall his name. I saw a report. It might have been Mike Kliss that mentioned someone in the Vikings front office George Paton has his eye on importing from Minnesota. So I believe the first instinct here is to get someone he's familiar with as his right-hand man, as his Matt Russell. Could be Champ Kelly, but I'm starting to think, Chad, the longer that goes on, the longer he's not hired. No news is bad news for Kelly. Yeah.
By the way, Oscar, I tried to go up as far as I could in the chat. I couldn't see a message, the message you referenced. So holler, and John will keep an eye out in the chat. So our friend Chris, a.k.a. Blue Raw, jumping in. Appreciate you, my friend. He says, well, we better get Micah Parsons, Jeremiah, I'm just going to say J.O.K., Joseph Asai, mostly Parsons, to be honest, if we're sticking with luck. Yeah, I mean, he's talking about off-ball linebackers, and I know J.O.K., he's kind of a hybrid. He's a guy that some draft nicks peg as a inside linebacker, some kind of peg him more as a box safety like a Jeremy Chin. We'll see, but I'm going to be A-OK at pick 9, if it's Parsons, Farley, maybe Surtain. We'll see how the board falls, but it needs to be one of those big time. I mean, the cornerback is the biggest hole, but that doesn't mean you necessarily reach. If it's the right guy there, you take him. But I think if you get a Micah Parsons falling to you at pick 9, that's just not a gift horse you look in the mouth.
Right. Yeah. Can we call him Joke, though? I'm going to petition and call him that. It's just a little easier, a little less wordy. So I think Owusu, he's a little better in coverage. And I haven't, like Chad, we really haven't jumped headfirst into draft coverage just yet or scouting these prospects. But right now, very tentatively on January 17th, if they're at number 9 and you have your pick of anyone between Caleb Farley, Micah Parsons, even Zavin Collins if he rises up the draft boards, but you need an inside linebacker, you need a cornerback, and this is the ideal scenario, Chad, where best player available kind of intersects with drafting for need.
BNS in the house. Good to see you, brother. He says thank you. He says, at the very least, we can get JOK at 9. We need defense. I'm going to need to do a little bit more film study on JOK because I know Nick Kendall likes him, but he has his doubts as to whether or not he'd be a pick 9 caliber guy. Like if you trade back, like we talked about earlier, if the phone rings and you have a chance to move back to low 20s, something like that, it would be a pick that would probably make a little bit more sense there, but we'll see. He's a really interesting player. Definitely definitely a guy that could help this defense, no doubt about it.
And that's a guy who's probably going to test well at the combine or whatever constitutes the combine this year in the pre-draft process. He could rise up the draft boards, but right now that's a little too rich for my blood using the number 9 overall pick. They want to move back. If Parsons is off the board, they're dead set on a linebacker. I'm fine with it. But if Farley's there, it's going to be a lot to convince me to take, JOK over him.
All right. We are sitting here at about 50 minutes. We have quite a few patiently waiting superstars to grab here before we dip out. So let's try and rapid fire these, Zach, so that we can get to everybody tonight here. And starting with Fat Cats, good to see you, my friend. Appreciate you. He says, with all the noise in the media about Vaughn, does this change our draft need more to rush, linebacker, edge on the chance he doesn't come back, in your opinions? Yeah, we haven't really touched on that as far as, our overall view on the Von Miller situation as a publication, Mile High Huddle, is we're not in the business, and we're not going to get into the business of speculating on whatever this criminal investigation is. We don't know. The only thing we know on that side of things is that he is being investigated on a criminal level by Parker PD. Parker PD confirmed that to 9 News, to Mike Kliss. So setting that aside and just recognizing that he's under criminal investigation, Zach, at a very inopportune time, right? With a new GM coming in, already questions surrounding, even if there hadn't been a GM change, questions about will the Broncos stick with his $17.5 million base salary? It's a team option. Yes, he's not a free agent. He's under contract, but the Broncos have the option to either pick up that last year or not. And so it's very tenuous situation that Von Miller suddenly finds himself in, at least with regard to the Broncos. Now, if the Broncos ended up moving on from him, it's probably not going to be much skin off his teeth in terms of, football, because someone out there, we talked about this, Zach, I want to say at some point last week, we touched on this. There are going to be teams out there lining up to pay Von Miller, even coming off an injury, an injured season like this, depending on how the medicals check out, for teams. So he'll land on his feet one way or another, but I think it does move edge up a little bit in terms of priority. But you still have Bradley Chubb coming off a Pro Bowl year. You have Malik Reed, who Vic Fangio said is just getting started, like he's just scratching the surface, actually led the team in sacks, by the way. Malik Reed did, not Bradley Chubb. And then, it's kind of falls off a cliff from there. You could bring back Jeremiah Atachu. He was kind of meh to me this year in terms of what he brought to the table. So it's a need. You do need to add some edge depth, but the question is, are you looking to spend a premium round pick? Definitely, to me, not a first round pick. Even if Vaughn ends up getting the boot, I don't want to spend a first round pick there. I'd look more in rounds 2 and 3 to see what might be available.
First of all, I don't want to speculate on the ongoing investigation. That's a personal matter for Von Miller. And let me just advise everyone, before jumping to conclusions and informing opinions, let the facts emerge from this case. I tend to think he'll be okay, but that's as far as I'm going to go on that. In terms of him with the Broncos, they're going to have to make a decision, Chad, relatively soon, by the first day of the new league year, which is March 9th. So they got to decide whether to pick up that option then or decline it and maybe look to move on. I think he does come back. I'm still holding true to that, maybe on a restructure. But if he doesn't come back for whatever reason, traded, released, what have you, edge, like you said, it goes up the totem pole. I wouldn't use a first round pick, but it becomes a top 3 draft need. I'm still taking a cornerback because you don't have anyone there either. And a Vic Fangio scheme, you need cornerbacks to succeed or at least to play elite ball. That's with or without Vaughn, I'm waiting on edge to the second round at the minimum.
Let's grab Michael Clark here. And then John, just for what it's worth, I see a good one here on Facebook from a longtime listener, Eddie Keating. We'll grab that one and then rapid fire through what else we have here. But Michael, thank you for the super chat. Of course, this is, we know the name threw me off for a second here. Change the profile pic, change the name. We're talking about the Broncos wizard in the house right now. Mundungus, good to see you, bro. He says, I don't have an issue with Locke staying put as the starter, right? But I do have a problem if the Broncos have a chance at a better quarterback like a Stafford or a salty veteran, and they pass it up because they have Locke. So it just depends, I think, Mike, on what your version of a chance means. Like if it's Matthew Stafford, and they make him available on trade, and they say, yeah, we'll give him up for 2 first-round picks. You have a chance at that, But is that really a viable option for you as a franchise to give up 2 draft picks for a quarterback who was drafted in 2009? These are things that are going to be balanced.
God, I'm not trading 2 first-rounders for Matt Stafford. And it's so funny. Mundagus, I appreciate the sentiment and I appreciate the question, but, I know you're not a big Lock guy, but 2 of the biggest knocks on Locker, he's turnover-prone and injury-prone and inconsistent, but those are the same knocks on Matt Stafford as well. Everyone points to his game-started streak. I'm not talking about that. He is nicked up consistently throughout every single season. He's always picking up injuries, and even when he's healthy, he really never was that elite-level quarterback to me. And again, though, you're committing, and this is always the deterring factor to me, you're committing not only the draft capital and picking up his mega contract, Chad, but you're bringing him into Denver, and he's still going to have Pat Shurmur. So is that the hill you want to die on by making a big move for a quarterback to pair him with Pat Shurmur? And rather than just maintain the status quo, keep your picks, keep your money, and go into 2021 with the incumbents under center.
All right, let's grab this one from Ed Keating. He was a longtime superstar, very active on Facebook in our Facebook community now. Good to see you, Ed. He says, if this team makes a playoffs next year, not the Super Bowl, just the playoffs, with Locke and Vic, what do you think Paton would do? Do you think he would stay with Locke and Vic or go out and build the team his way? No, if the Broncos make the playoffs next year under those circumstances, you don't change a thing. You don't change it. Vic keeps his job. In fact, that's probably the only way Vic keeps his job is a playoff berth. And for Drew, you're stoked. I mean, you're geeked out of your mind that a quarterback you drafted, and I'm not saying Paton, but as a team, a quarterback you drafted and developed led you to a playoff berth. Man, you're singing to high heaven. That's an ideal situation. That's a nice little launching pad, Zach, into 2022.
I'll take it a step further. If the Broncos go to the playoffs, they're probably giving Vic Fangio an extension because he wouldn't be a lame duck going into the next season, or at least, on tenuous ground. So yeah, like you said, if they make the playoffs, or at the very, very least, they go 9-7 and have a winning record, if they show the franchise is trending upward and can look like that consistently, that's the biggest thing to Paton. He doesn't want to have one good season, one bad season. He doesn't want Jason Garrett, in Denver. He doesn't want that roller coaster. He wants consistent, winning playoff football with the Broncos. He is going to get back to the Pat Bowlen standard that's been abandoned the last 5 seasons.
John, next, just FYI, out of my reach are the following: Geo, the Belichick podcast, BNS, and then I've got John Houston in my stream here. So let's start here with Isaac. Good to see you, my friend. Appreciate that super chat. By the way, reminder to all of our superstars here on Super Chat, make sure you connect with us on Twitter. We like being able to keep the conversation going there with you and shouting you out after the show. But Isaac says, what's up, Chad and Zach? Probably not a question you guys want to answer, but which veteran quarterback would you guys like us to bring in? For me, it's an Andy Dalton type. It's a Ryan Fitzpatrick type. It's a guy that is a true fail-safe. Like if Locke ends up not turning the corner, sucks it up, or gets hurt, it's a guy who can come in and competently quarterback the offense and actually give you a chance to win games, which Jeff Driscoll did not do. Like, it was a little bit of a flash in the pan, that Pittsburgh game. You were surprised at how competitive the Broncos were and had a chance to actually win the game at the end. But then, the rubber band effect snapped right back into reality the next week. Tom Brady wiped the floor with the Broncos, and the rest is history. The Broncos need a true, competent veteran. Those are the 2 guys right now jumping out that I would like. I don't want a Matt Ryan. I don't want a Matt Stafford, because you got to, again, similar to the Watson thing, just add a decade. You're giving up the farm to get either of those guys.
Well, as the resident Stan, let me just throw out there Dak Prescott. I can dream. I have hopes and dreams as well. I mean, it would be great if he hit the open market. It'd be great to get Dak Prescott in Denver. But among the veteran types, I don't want Trubisky. I just think he's way too inconsistent and he doesn't offer franchise upside. I don't want Fitzpatrick. He's a little too injury prone, turnover prone. I wouldn't mind Andy Dalton. Considering what I saw in Dallas this year and what I saw in Cincinnati during his tenure there, he never really got enough credit. He was always a really consistent, above-average quarterback. And that, again, we've been saying this for a while now. It might not be the preference, but it's all you really need. When the Broncos are a healthy team and a well-coached team with the defense they have, an above-average, consistent quarterback with the pieces around him, that's a playoff team.
By the way, Tom Brady just took the lead back. Bucks are up 23-20 with just under 10 minutes to go. Gio, good to see you, my brother. Talk about a superstar foundational MHH Mount Rushmore guy. Appreciate you, my brother. He says, I agree with Zach that there won't be too many changes in coaching, but Paton definitely needs to make his presence noted and fire Tom McMahon.
I don't understand how McMahon still has a job. I still literally cannot wrap my mind around that. But Paton can't come in and be the new GM and be the new guy on the playground and demand that Vic Fangio upend his coaching staff. That's Fangio's decision, and he decided to stick with McMahon, and that could lead to his downfall, Chad, next season.
Pobby in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Really appreciate you jumping in there and showing us some love. She was also there, of course, for Kelberman's Corner today on Facebook. Appreciate you so much. And all the guys that are gosh, I totally underestimated just how slow and backed up the United States Postal Service was, because we ended up shipping out all the stuff Pobby made up for the different pod hosts December 28th, something like that. Some guys still haven't gotten their stuff, and it was all shipped the same day. So anyway, love you, Pobby. Appreciate you. She says, lucky to catch you guys live, listening on my break. Thank you. Well, we appreciate you popping in for a second.
Yes, Bobby, thank you so much. We appreciate you more than we can express to you. Thank you.
All right, we've got Belichick's podcast is all I'll say on this. Got a little naughty word in it. So Belichick's podcast says, what do y'all think of Zach Wilson? Right now, he's my QB2 and better than Locke. What do you think it would take to trade up for him? Zach, I know you like Zach Wilson.
I do.
I like him too, but let me put it to you this way, and then we'll get to the question of what would it take. Is he better today, day one, than Drew Lock is now, year 3?
You can't compare college and NFL quarterbacks. I mean, we've seen Lock's NFL, in practice, Chad. We've seen what Lock can do in the NFL. We haven't seen Zach Wilson obviously take one snap in the NFL, so it's pointless to compare college and NFL quarterbacks. It's all subjective. I think Zach Wilson is the second best quarterback in this class, and I'll say it again. I don't think the gap is too wide between Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. I do think Wilson, when it's all said and done, will go number 2 overall to the Jets. They are stupid, Chad, even with the new coach and Robert Saleh. If they stick with Sam Darnold and don't take Zach Wilson there, I think he's going to be a great pro. He's going to have a great career. A lot of Baker Mayfield I see in him. But in terms of him compared to Drew Lock, you can't do it. But I will say to this podcast, you have a new subscriber based on that name alone.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, I like Wilson. I don't like him number 2 overall. I don't like him. If it's my team holding that pick, I like him. I don't love him that much. And
I love him more than Fields and Lance.
I do too. But the one thing that makes me nervous about Wilson is kind of the 1-year wonder. I mean, he's played, he's been at BYU for 3 years, but in terms of the tent pole, the one, I'll just say it again, being a 1-year wonder in terms of production, so good that it elevates the profile, elevates the draft stock. It makes me uncomfortable. So, I mean, Joe Burrow, in my opinion, we've talked a lot this podcast about exceptions that prove the rule. Joe Burrow, to me, is one of those guys that proves the rule. I mean, time will tell. We'll see what his NFL career ultimately looks like. But, even Baker Mayfield had 2 really good years at Oklahoma before he ended up being the number 1 overall pick. So I think if you're the Broncos trying to get from 9 to 2 to guarantee him, for example, I mean, honestly, Zach, I'll be stunned if Justin Fields doesn't go number 2 or isn't the second quarterback off the board. It's probably a better way to say it. I really do. I'll be surprised if it doesn't happen.
Debate that.
Things could change between now and the actual draft, Senior Bowl, the combine, stuff like that. But I don't think it would cost as much to move up to land Wilson as you might think. All right, we're running long here, so let's grab John. Thank you for the super chat, John. He says, are the rumors true that Locke is quarterback 1 starting 2021? I don't know why people think we will give a first-round pick for Matthew Stafford, maybe a second. Yeah, I don't know about the second part of your question there, John, but yeah, I mean, you've got Woody Paige, a longtime insider, saying it's going to be Drew Lock in 2021 and that John Elway and Vic Fangio were pushing for that.
Yeah, with probably a better veteran quarterback behind him, maybe like an Andy Dalton, maybe like a Ryan Fitzpatrick. But again, guys, if you're holding out for that big blockbuster trade for Deshaun Watson or Matt Stafford, don't hold your breath.
Fishing with Cindy and Don jumping in. Thank you. It's been a minute since we've seen y'all, and we appreciate you. They say Drew can be one of the best quarterbacks on any given Sunday, but the wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs need to help him. If they don't run scramble drills during every practice, they are failing both Locke and the receivers. That's a good point that you bring up about the scramble drills, because that is one thing that the Broncos offense were terrible at last year. And you've heard me say it on this podcast many times that, unlike Patrick Mahomes, when today, that was a bad result, but when he breaks the pocket, Mahomes, you're just waiting for a huge play to happen. That's where most of the big plays come from in that Chiefs offense. Drew Lock last year anyway, when he broke the pocket, man, I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. Something bad going to happen. And I think you're right on that they didn't emphasize scramble drill well enough, because I can't think of multiple times. And a lot of times too, Zach, the television broadcast would do a good job illustrating this. The wide receivers are supposed to be trained to come back to the ball and do certain things on scramble drill. And it's almost like they were lost. They were up in the clouds when Locke would break the pocket. So maybe that does need to be a much stronger point of emphasis for Pat Shurmur and Mike Shula in 2021.
There it is. I was going to say who they are, Chad, by name. And I think that's one of the areas where the coaching failed Locke and the Broncos. And it's on Locke as well. It's on the receivers as well. That's a elementary backyard football thing to come back to your quarterback and be adept at scrambling. But it just seemed like in situational coaching and game planning and stuff like that, management, the Broncos fell way short last year, and they did their young quarterback very few favors.
Base Gase in the house. Good to see you, my friend. He says, Brian Daboll possibly going to the Chargers. More bad news for us. Our rivals are getting stronger. Vaughn possibly gone next season, and another year of uncertainty at quarterback. Yeah, it kind of feels that way, right? Everyone else is getting bigger and stronger, and the Broncos, it's unclear quite yet. Have they gotten better? We think so. I mean, Zach, when George Paton was hired Wednesday, you said, look, this is the brightest moment since you've covered the team in 2016. And wow. I'm with you there. I think the Denver Broncos are on the right track, but there are going to be some growing pains. It's going to take some time to fully flush out whatever Peyton's ultimate vision is. And, he's got to get the quarterback thing right. If Elway and Vic are telling him it needs to be Drew, and he ultimately acquiesces and says, all right, we'll give him this chance, hopefully he doesn't end up ruining that decision. But you know what? If he does, it simply means Vic Fangio, goodbye. He'll be gone in 2022.
Exactly.
And Peyton can start over, including at quarterback.
Exactly. It best serves George Paton to keep everything in place, and that's what I think Elway and Ellis and Vic Fangio want anyway. But real quick, Devin White just picked off Drew Brees. This is why we are pushing for a dynamic inside linebacker. It's past time the Broncos get that guy in the middle of whoever is the outside linebackers. I want him, Chad. Micah Parsons, I've seen these players and the Devin Bushes and the Devin Whites and all these players in the NFL, all these young linebackers. I want that guy in Denver. That's exactly why.
All right, a couple more, and then we got to get out of here. From Kenneth Booker again. Thank you, my friend. He goes, why does Surtain, this Alabama cornerback, Patrick Surtain II, seem to be favored over Virginia Tech's Caleb Farley? We're talking about corners here. I don't know what you're reading there, but what I have heard is that there are some teams that have some pretty serious misgivings about the opt-out players. So the studs that had, first, second round caliber buzz going into 2020's college football season, like Farley, like even Micah Parsons, who chose to opt out, that's actually costing them, or could end up costing them, a lot more in terms of draft pedigree, or draft stock, I should say, than they might have originally realized. But at the end of the day, I mean, look, we talked about the other day, Joey Bosa didn't seem to hurt him too much. I'm not sure on that, Kenneth, where you're hearing that, but I still like Farley over that. Surtain, not quite, in my opinion, the athlete Farley is.
It's Surtain has the higher floor, whereas Farley has the higher ceiling. And you mentioned one reason he played at Alabama, so he has name recognition. And also, look who his father was. That's also going into the favoring and why he's more of a household name. But for the Broncos defense, Farley just fits a Vic Fangio system a lot better. And if he's there, you make a great case for him to be the 9th overall pick.
You know what, though? Name me, off the top of your head, name me an Alabama corner who's actually done well in the league.
Trevon Diggs.
Who?
Last year. Trevon Diggs for the Cowboys.
Well, we can pull it up. Was he that good? I mean,
he led the team in picks.
All right, so there's one. We'll see. We'll see if he can sustain.
He looked pretty good. I mean,
I'm thinking of Dre Kirkpatrick as well, just off the top of my head here. And Kareem Jackson was once an Alabama corner that went in the first round back in 2010. Didn't convert to safety till well deep into his career. I'm talking 7-8 years into his career. Makes me a little bit nervous, but we'll see.
Another bust was D. Milner back in the day for the Jets. I'll never forget that player. It was a first-round cornerback who was just so bad. So that's pull up some PTSD there, Chad.
Here's Mundungus from a different account. Appreciate you, bro. He goes, I was logged into the wrong account. My bad. I like this profile pic better. Anyways, hey, man, I like the other one that has the guitar, though. You know, the inner musician comes out there in your profile pic.
Yeah, appreciate you, Mike. Thank you.
All right, let me see real quick here, John. I'm going to grab Gerald. In fact, Zach, if you wouldn't mind getting started, grab Gerald, and I'm going to see where we're at on the backside.
Yeah, Gerald dropping in, $5 donation. Thank you so much, Gerald. He asked, do you think that they push for a new GM to stick with Locke due to Elway's failure to find a good quarterback, Deshaun Watson? I do think that is right now the very early mindset in Dove Valley is to stick with Locke, stick with Shermer, obviously, stick with Vic Fangio, and keep most of the 2020 components in place for the next season. And like Chad mentioned multiple times now, if it doesn't work out, it's no skin off George Paton's nose. He gets rid of everyone and brings in his own coaching staff, his own quarterback. You know, we can debate on this until for hours and hours and hours, Chad, but I just don't think Deshaun Watson is coming to Denver. I just don't think it's at all realistic for Broncos fans to expect.
Yeah, I mean, what a power move that would be, though, but it'd also be very risky. Then again, if you're George Paton, you've got a 6-year term on that deal. You're feeling pretty comfortable and cozy and confident with where you're at in terms of job security, at least for the foreseeable. So, but I still agree with you. I'm just talking. That was just pure tinfoil. I really don't think the Broncos are one of the players, if indeed he ends up on the trading block. And I think it was Kim today, Kim Becker, during Kelberman's Corner mentioned, the Broncos aren't, as far as Vegas. I mean, Vegas, they know what's up, right? The bettors, sportsbetting.com, the odds makers, they know what's up. The Broncos are not considered even in the top 7 as likely destination. Oscar, good to see you, my friend. Thank you for the super chat. Oscar, and one more, and then we got to go, guys. He says, this will be a big year for Vic. If he has another lame duck year, I would pound the table for Eric Bieniemy or Joe Brady. Go Broncos. Yeah, still mystified, honestly. I mean, I can assume what the reason is, but still just stunned. Eric Bieniemy did not land a head coaching job this cycle.
Well, he might go to the Texans still. I mean, that's up in the air. And especially if the Chiefs lose next week, he'll be available. But yeah, he should be a head coach, certainly. And Joe Brady, he was a finalist for the Atlanta job that went to Arthur Smith. And real quick, they paired Arthur Smith, the former Tennessee Titans coordinator, with Terry Fontenot, our old friend there. And now he's the Atlanta GM. That is a great pairing there. I love what Atlanta's doing. But absolutely, if Fangio's gone after next season, the next coach of the Broncos has to be an offensive mind, and preferably a young offensive mind like Joe Brady. All
right, we got Corey, and then one more super popped in late from Chris P. Thank you, Corey, for the super chat. He says, assume issues with Vaughn. So, and let's just assume for the sake of his super that they move on from Vaughn. Do you trade down and grab a Joseph Asai? No, I don't. I still go with an off-ball guy or a cornerback because I have Bradley Chubb and I have Malik Reed. That doesn't mean I ignore edge. It's just it's not at the top of my docket.
Right. I mean, you proved that, you have Bradley Chubb, who was a Pro Bowler, and you prove that you can at least win games or get by with Malik Reed at the linebacker. So, no, I'm not using a first-round pick, regardless of Vaughn's status.
John just corrected me on something. This has changed. Sportsbetting.com, for what it's worth, has the Broncos as 5th most likely players to land Deshaun Watson.
Who's number 1?
Who is number 1, John? Oh, he doesn't have it right in front of him. We can look at it another time. But Chris P., thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you being with us. He says, just wanted to show some support. Thanks for the content. Well, gosh, man, that makes us feel great. That's a name we don't recognize on super chat. So welcome. Thank you. Yes. And tonight, Zach, another night full of super chats that were from newer names, people that we haven't noticed or seen before on super chat. So welcome to all of our new listeners as the channel continues to grow on YouTube and the podcast audience. We love all of you. Appreciate you, Chris, and everyone else. Make sure you connect with us on social media. And here's how you do it. We got to get out of here, gang. At Huddle Up Pod on Twitter. Also the main account, at Mile High Huddle. Zach Kelberman, at Kelberman NFL. Myself, at Chad and Jensen. That's one of the ways we keep the conversation going outside of these pods. Plus, we want you over at milehighhuddle.com commenting on every story. We want to hear your takes on all of the issues, all of the topics. And if we, have a take of our own that you take exception to or you don't like, we want to hear it. So those are the two places. Keep the conversation going. But guys, we got to get out of here. So have a great start to your week. we'll hopefully hear from George Paton either tomorrow or Tuesday. Zach, have a great week, my brother, and sign us out.
Yeah, Chris, anyone who's a new member or a first-time donator tonight, please, if you have a question, drop it in either tonight or tomorrow. We'll be back on the air 6 p.m. Mountain Time tomorrow night, Chad. I'm looking forward to hopefully gleaning more about George Paton and at least knowing when he'll be introduced. I think it'll be Tuesday, but as things go forward, we'll have maybe more of an indication who he might be bringing in, how the wind is blowing in Dove Valley. So we'll see you guys then. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And as always, go Broncos.
You've been listening to the Huddle Up Podcast. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.